Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Bet you didn't know you were in for some aerobics this afternoon.
So thanks for the introduction, MC, and hi, everyone. As MC said, my name's Ashley, and I'm a senior designer here at Atlassian, and thank you so much for making the time to come to our talk. I know it's later in the afternoon, and so you might be feeling like you're a bit tired and want to get on to Bash, but thanks for spending the time.
And I'm Becky, and I'm a senior researcher here at Atlassian. It's so great to be here this afternoon. We are so excited to share our story about early signal testing with you all today. So let's get started.
So we're going to start off with a bit of a number. 35,000. That is the total number of decisions we all individually make every single day. Now think about that for a second. That's one decision every 1.5 seconds.
That's a lot. Now, of course, these decisions can be as small and trivial as deciding whether you're going to have skim or soy milk in your latte this morning, or if you're going to have cereal or eggs for breakfast. You clearly made a decision today, a really good one, by the way, to come to our talk. We're so glad that you made that decision. Now, these decisions you can generally make quite quickly and with little thought because they don't have much consequence.
But on the flip side to this, other decisions can be a lot scarier and have a lot more impact, like deciding whether you want to marry someone or deciding whether you want to move across the globe for another job.
Decisions can be a lot of things. Decisions can be an upgrade. They can be life-changing. They can be exciting. But they can also be exhausting and at times even feel daunting. Decisions, especially the big ones, can just plain be scary. You find yourself thinking things like, what if I screw up? What if I make the wrong decision? What if I make this choice and things can never go back to the way things were before?
But these feelings aren't exclusive to personal decisions only. Product decisions can be really scary too. Take Netflix, for example. Netflix, you know today, is a streaming service. But as many of you may know, it used to be a DVD service. And they made a really big decision as an organization to split their services between streaming and DVDs. So you can imagine just how scary that product decision must have been for them.
Another great example is from Facebook. So today, this is the Facebook newsfeed that we all know, where Facebook's algorithms are powering what we see first at the very top of our newsfeed. And this takes all kinds of things into account, like what our friends are liking, what's most popular, any current events. It seems like if there's any weddings or babies being born, those always pop right up to the top of our newsfeed. So Facebook's algorithm is powering what we see first. But believe it or not, it wasn't always like this. It used to be in chronological order. So making this decision to change their most used feature must have been incredibly scary for Facebook. And not everybody was happy about it. In fact, a lot of people felt this was an invasion of privacy. They were totally pissed. They made protest groups saying, bring back our old news feed. And these groups were on Facebook, of course. So can you imagine if you were the product manager that had to make the call to make this decision? It's easy to look back at this Netflix and this Facebook example now and say, oh, those turned out pretty well. But in the moment, you don't really know how these decisions are going to pan out, how your customers are going to react, or what impact that might have on your business long term.
And as you know, after seeing the keynote and all the talks today, we too have made a lot of big and scary decisions lately. We recently made the decision to redesign our entire design language. So anything from our logos, our color, our typography, our marketing, how our products look and feel. It went from something like this to something like this. A place where there's lots of bold colors, new illustration styles, a whole new navigation system. So you can imagine just how many big and scary decisions we had to make as designers and as an organization. Because when you're designing for millions of customers, the decisions that you make have an impact, whether they're good or bad. And so it's really important that we don't take them lightly, because we know that you rely on our products to get your jobs done.
So how did we make these scary decisions? Well, we used a healthy balance of careful thought, trust in our skills, and research. Careful thought was important, of course, because we didn't want to rush into anything. We really dove into the problem to understand it from all angles, and we considered lots of potential solutions. Trust in our skills was important, and not just trust in our own skills, but also the trust of our team members' skills and expertise. So we made sure to take input from across the organization, from different disciplines. And it wasn't just internal input that we gathered, but also external input through research with our customers and non-customers as well. It was really important for us to get these people's opinions on these decisions and understand the impact that these decisions may have on them. And it wasn't until we did this research that we really felt confident in the decisions that we were making.
And to be sure that we were making the right decisions, one of the research methodologies that we used is called early signal testing. And that's what we're going to talk to you guys about today. So we're going to cover what is early signal testing and how you can use it to decrease internal debate within your organizations. What are the different types of methods that you can use in early signal testing, as well as how you can quickly and easily get started with early signal testing within your organizations. But first, we want to take a reflection and look at how we do research here at Atlassian and where early signal testing fits into that.
Right. So at Atlassian, customer research is embedded into every stage of the product lifecycle. At the beginning, when we've just got an inkling of an idea for a product or feature, we really try to understand customer pain points and if this is going to be valuable to our customers. After we validated that this is worth pursuing, we use research in the make it phase, where we're conducting usability to make sure that our designs are easy to use and not confusing or frustrating. And then after we ship, we're using research to help improve our products even more. So we're taking a look at the analytics, we're layering on qualitative research on top of it, and we're bringing this all back to our teams to continuously improve our product. So as you can see, research is really in every step of the way. And we're asking lots of different questions. We're trying to understand things like, is this future feature idea valuable? Also, how are customers using our products today? Where do they fit into getting their job done and their workflow? We're exploring usability, so understanding what's working, what's valuable, and what's confusing or frustrating. Where could we improve? And we're also looking at things like emotional engagement. So how do people feel when they're using our products, whether that's good or bad? And the way we do research really varies. It all depends on what we're exploring. So one of my favorite types of research is actually going to our customers' offices and sitting with them, sitting alongside them, seeing their laptop and their monitor set up, seeing all the sticky notes and Sharpies and coffee mugs on their desks, and really getting a real feel for how Atlassian products fit into their day-to-day. Another way we conduct research is inviting people into our office. So here you can see I'm conducting a card sorting exercise with a participant where we have different features and we're discussing the relative value of all of them, and we've sort of prioritized them. And when our customers can't come to us, we come to them, virtually of course, via video conference. So we conduct video conference with our customers, and this is really valuable, so we're not limited by location or time zone or anything like that. We can see our participants and see their smiling faces, and we can also have them share their screens with us, so we can see their product usage and have them walk us through how they're using our tools. So this is moderated research where we're engaging with participants. We're able to see their facial expressions, their body language, and able to ask them follow-up questions, things like that. We also conduct something called unmoderated research, where participants are completing tasks independently. That gets recorded and then sent back to us. And that looks something like this. We'll talk more about the pros and cons of these later, but what I'm trying to point out here is that we do all sorts of different types of research.
So when we're talking with our customers, we conduct all different types of research methods, as you can see on the screen here. It can be anything from a usability test to a card sort, like what Becky was just talking about a second ago. But some of these types of research can take a lot of time, and sometimes we don't have that time. But what happens if there was a way that you could get quick and actionable feedback? And that's where early signal testing can really come into play. So I'm sure many of you have been in the situation where you've been in a meeting with your team and one half of the team wants to go down one direction for a product decision and the other half of the team wants to go down another direction for the same decision. Coming up with a solution might almost feel impossible, but what happens if there was a way that you could talk to your customers and bring back some data into the conversation and help you inform that decision? And this is where early signal testing can really help you. So early signal testing is a method to get quick and actionable feedback from your customers. It's a method that allows you to test out an idea, a design, it could be a bit of content. It's really up to you.
So let me tell you a little bit more about why we find early signal testing valuable here at Atlassian. All the value really comes from the information that you get back from this research, both the quantitative, the metrics type of information, as well as the qualitative, so understanding the what and the why behind that information. So it brings data into the conversation. Like Ash said, why argue about opinions and options and feeling paralyzed by choice, all these pros and cons? With early signal testing, you can get this data and have that help inform the discussion. But it's important to note that while this data helps give you some direction, it's not binding. You don't have to go with what the research says. There's lots of things that these research participants might not know about your roadmaps or how long this feature might take to develop. There's all kind of information that is also valuable to include in your decision along with the early signal testing feedback. Another great thing about early signal testing is that it's quick. And as you'll see in our examples today, it doesn't take a lot of time to whip something up and get it in front of customers for this feedback. You don't need any detailed prototypes or working code, anything like that. You can get feedback really quickly in as little as a few hours or a few days. And don't worry, you don't have to be a research expert to do it. We're very confident that after seeing our presentation today, you guys can conduct research like this at your own companies come Monday.
So now that you have a better idea of what early signal testing is, we're now going to talk about the different types of research methods that you can use in early signal testing. And as you can see here, there's lots of different types that we have recently been using on the screen here, yep. But today we want to focus in on 5 of these. So basically we're going to explain what each method is, how we've used it, showing you a couple of examples, and why it's valuable as well. So these are some of the methods we use to help inform our design decisions when designing Atlassian's new look.
Okay, first up is aesthetics testing. So aesthetics is all about visual appeal. And you know that when designing a product, getting that look and feel right is really important. But this can be something that's oftentimes really hard to research, because how people react to a visual is oftentimes just a gut feeling, gut reaction. So it can be hard to know why something is perceived as attractive or unattractive. So this is where aesthetics tests can really help. So it allows you to tap into these gut reactions, collect them, and dig into the why. You can also see if there's any unintended reactions to your visuals. And most importantly, you can see which of your visuals are connecting best. So if you're considering a couple different options, aesthetics tests can really help. It can also help see if your logo is matching your intentions. So if you were to go out and start a company tomorrow, you'd have to come up with your new company name and a new company logo. And you'd probably have a handful of words that you're trying to convey about your business. Maybe you want your business to feel super high-tech and modern. Or maybe you want it to feel more approachable and friendly and traditional. There's a lot of different directions that you could go. So you could use an aesthetics test to make sure that what your logo is conveying to your customers matches what you think it should be conveying. And that's exactly what our brand team did here at Atlassian. So as you heard about in the keynote, we have recently redesigned our Atlassian logo, our product logos, and there was a lot of careful thought and decision that went into these changes. So our team used an aesthetics test to help be confident in the direction that they were heading. So what they did was actually created a quick mock-up. As you can see here, it didn't take much time. This is purposely blurry, by the way. So what they gave research participants was this and the prompt: imagine that you're flipping through the App Store. You come upon this app. What kind of product do you think it is? What kind of company do you think makes this app? And got people to just kind of talk about this. Again, all that they were reacting to was the logo here. So we got some really rich, valuable feedback here. But we also got some quantitative information because we had people sort words into categories, words that applied and words that didn't apply to this logo. And from this, we were able to see if what we intended for our logo and our product logos were hitting the mark. And we ran this research with all kinds of different directions. It wasn't just the one we ended up with. We had lots of different options. We also ran it with our current logos. And from this, our brand team was able to feel really confident in the direction that we ended up choosing. And this is our new Jira software logo today.
Awesome. So next up is preference testing. And preference testing is literally what the name implies. So it's asking participants to choose their preference between one or more options. So preference testing is really good for gathering users' initial inclination, so really trying to understand people's first gut reaction. it's really good to understand the whys. So why did someone choose option A over option B? And it's really good to see if there's an easy winner. A lot of the time in preference testing, there is an easy winner, and so it's good to take that back to the team, because then if you've got most of the team thinking that option A is the way to go, but in fact the results come back and it's option B, then you actually have the data from your customers to be like, hey, actually, wrong choice. So one of the examples that we'd like to share with you guys today is from our information experience team, so our writers at Atlassian. So they were really interested in testing out the tone of voice for our documentation. So how should we be communicating to our customers through our documentation? So they simply sent out 2 different paragraphs written in 2 different ways and asked people, which one do you prefer? And then got them to say why they preferred that option. And what they were actually able to find was that option B came out on top. Actually 90+% people actually chose that because they described it as a lot more friendlier and approachable. So what the IX team actually did was they were able to apply that to right across our documentation and update how we're actually communicating. So just by doing that one early signal test, we were able to use that data to inform how we actually communicate to our customers via our documentation. Another fantastic example is from our platform team. So these guys were really interested in looking at the different illustration styles when we were redesigning the new project creation experience. So you can see on the left here for the option A that it's a simple icon that we've used. And option B was a more detailed preview of the template that you're choosing when you create a project, kind of like when you create a PowerPoint or a Word document. So what was really interesting with this preference test, unlike what I said earlier with an easy winner, it actually came back pretty equal. So there were many people that liked the simplistic style of option A and then the more detailed version of option B. And what the platform team were able to do is combine the two in a happy medium, like you can see here. So we sort of landed on a healthy fidelity between the two. And so just by doing that early signal test, you can see that we were able to land on the right illustration style.
All right, next up is comprehension testing. So if you're familiar with our products, you know that at times they can be complicated. And so a lot of times when we're designing, we're trying to communicate this complicated information through design and copy, whether it's instructing people about how to configure a workflow or set up user permission schemes. So it's really important for us to ensure that this information is really easy to comprehend. So this is where comprehension tests help us out. Like I said, it helps us ensure that this complicated information is easy to comprehend. That's a lot of C's. Also make sure that people aren't misunderstanding that information. And it's especially helpful for our IX team, our writers, to ensure that the copy that they've written is clear. So a great example that we have is from our web team. So if you're familiar with our cloud products, you'll know that we recently introduced some new per-user pricing. This was a big change for us, and we really wanted to make sure that this was communicated clearly to our current customers and our future customers, because pricing is pretty dicey. We didn't want people to think that they were going to be paying one amount and then get the bill, and it was for something completely different. Can you imagine how frustrating that would be? So it was important for us to make sure that this information was communicated clearly. So our team had 3 potential directions that they were considering. And what they did was they actually got participants to calculate pricing. So it felt a little bit like a test in school. They calculated the pricing for 5 users, 10 users, 20 users, 100 users, and so on. And they did that with all these 3 directions. And on the first option here, they had all the information up front. So this was an option that our team was considering. They knew it was potentially risky, but they thought it was important to communicate that there are all these different price breaks. When they did the comprehension test, they found that people were actually inaccurately predicting the pricing. They got answers wrong. So this was really scary to our team, and they knew that we maybe needed to take a more simplistic direction. So then they tried out this version, which is super simplified and has this interactive slider that you can play around with. And on this one, people did get the answers correctly. However, they didn't understand all the pricing breaks, and they didn't really get the whole picture of what our pricing model was. They didn't know, if I add 5 more users, how much can I expect to add? So we tried another direction, which was this version here, and we felt pretty confident that we could cut it off at 100 users because 98% of our cloud user base have less than 100 users. So that's why they broke it up into these 2 chunks here, $10 per person for up to 10 users and $7 from there on. And then we've got 100 users hiding down there at the bottom. And this performed really well. People got all the answers correctly, they understood the pricing breaks, and they calculated everything right. So this is what our team ended up going with. This is what you see on www.atlassian.com today. And they did tweak the copy slightly at the bottom, communicating that we do offer discounts for larger teams down at the bottom. So it was through comprehension testing that our web team felt really confident moving forward with this per user pricing page on our website.
All right, next is navigation testing. So again, this is literally what the name implies. So just trying to understand how your users will navigate around your product. And navigation testing is really good for understanding users' initial wayfinding inclination. So that's just like how people would naturally feel to navigate around your product. It's also really awesome to see if there's another path. So have you designed something and someone's trying to navigate a particular way? And it's really good for assessing overall usability. So if people can't find a particular thing in your product, you might have to rethink that. So it's really good for understanding overall usability. So the first example we want to share with you today is from our platform team. And we were really interested in seeing how people would navigate between projects within Jira. And so what you can see on the screen here is a static image. We literally showed participants this screen and asked them to describe if they were to click on any of these numbers, where would they think that they would land? And then we then asked them if they were to click and try and find a different project, which number would they click? And what was really interesting is that we found that it was in fact number 3. So majority of people found number 3, and that's actually what landed in product today, which is known as the project switcher. So what was really great about this navigation test is that it was just a static screen, as I said. So by sending out that quick early signal testing, we were able to get quick and actionable feedback that then helped inform the pattern that we would then use in product. So another great example is from the Fabric team, and these guys were really interested in looking at how would people create a task within a Jira project. And they wanted to see that both at a global level and also within a project as well. And what they found was really interesting, that when users were in a global level, they actually wanted to navigate to within a project to then be able to create a task. So where users actually naturally felt that they would go to create a task was in the sidebar here, if you can see the plus button there, or in line within the board. So what was really great about these two examples is that we're testing static screens. So it was quick and it was easy. We didn't have to put too much effort into it, and we got some fantastic data back into our teams.
Okay, finally, concept testing. So if you're in technology, you probably have lots of ideas all the time about how your team might be able to improve your product and your feature. But how do you know if these ideas are really valuable? This is where concept testing can help. So it helps you explore these early product and feature ideas. It gets them in front of people, and you can learn what's valuable about your idea, maybe what's not so valuable and what's not worth pursuing, and it also can alert you to things that you hadn't considered, things that were missing. Most importantly, you can compare your idea about your solution to how users are currently solving this problem. Because when you're designing things, you have to consider how people's behavior is going to change. So it's really important to know how people are currently solving this problem and how big of a behavior change it's going to have to make if they move to this new solution. And behavior change was something that we really consider here at Atlassian, and that's what these next examples are all about. So this morning in the keynote, you heard about Atlassian Home. So this is a big behavior change for our users, stopping at this cross-product place where all this information is being combined. We didn't know how people were going to react and how we could make it most valuable to people. So what we did was our platform team actually researched just with this screen here. So you can see it didn't take very much time. I probably could have designed it myself, and I'm not a designer. So we had just had these 3 sections: your work, notification, and news feed. And we had people describe what they thought would be within each section. And if you came to our Barcelona Euro Summit, we actually conducted this at Euro Summit. So we got feedback from people at Summit, and then we used that. So we had people describe what they thought would be within each section and what they thought would be most valuable about that. Then we showed them what we were thinking would be within each section and had them compare and contrast. So this provided some really rich feedback for our team about what people were expecting and what was going to be most valuable for them. Another great example is from our Stride team. So again, if you were in the keynote, you heard all about this new decisions feature within our chat app Stride. And this was something that was totally new. We weren't sure if people were actually making decisions within chat. We didn't know if this was something that was actually happening and if this was a feature that was worth pursuing. So we used some early signal concept testing to explore this with people. And we didn't want to design all these complicated interactions or a full prototype. So what we did was we actually just mocked up a fake website and we called it Banana Chat. And we told people, pretend that you are considering a new chat app and you've come across this one. What do you think about it? And we called out some specific features, and of course one of them was this decision-making feature, and had people react to that. And that became what you saw today, our new decisions feature within our Stride app. And we did make a lot of changes based on what we learned in that concept test. So we learned what was going to be really valuable and maybe what wasn't worth pursuing.
Great. So now that we've covered the 5 different research methods that helped us make confident decisions when designing Atlassian's new look, it's now time to share with you how you guys can quickly and easily get started with your own early signal testing. So there's 5 quick and easy steps that you can see on the screen here that we're going to walk you through right now. The first is define your question and define your method. So this is really, really important to get right from the beginning, because if you get this wrong, then this could obviously impact your data. So when you're defining your question, first of all, it's important to think things like, what are the key things I'm trying to find out? Will I be able to collect the data that I need to get by answering this question? Will the answer to this question help me and my team? And does this have the potential to have an actual impact within the organization? When defining your question, it's really, really important to make it clear and to make sure that you can validate it. So just to share a quick example here, when we were trying to understand how people would perceive our new logos, we could have asked, what do people think of our new logos? That's really high level, really broad, and we're not going to get really accurate data if that is our research question and we ask that. This is a good example because it's clear and it's specific, and it also gives us more direct information because we're directly asking what the intent of our new logos are and how people will perceive them. So when you're defining your question and your method, it's really, really great to get your team involved, because you don't want to end up down the track having done all this hard work and this research, taking it back to your team, and then they're sort of questioning and pulling holes in the question that you've tried to ask and also the method that you've used. So just make sure that you get buy-in by your team and also stakeholders, run it by them, do some design critique, work it through, and get them involved.
All right, so after you've figured out your question and your method, it's time to figure out the who and the how. So who are you actually going to be researching with? Who are your research participants? So thinking about the who, while it might be tempting to just walk down the street and ask the first few people that you see the answer to your question, that's not going to give you very accurate data, because those people probably don't represent your customer base. So think about your customers and what are the characteristics that make them up. So if Ash and I are conducting some Jira research, we might want to speak with current Jira customers. But we can segment that down even further. We might want to speak with new Jira users, so maybe people that have been using our product for less than 6 months. Or maybe we want to talk to power users that have used the product for over 5 years. Maybe we want to talk to admins, or maybe we don't want to talk to customers at all. And if we are talking to non-customers, it's important to be specific there. We don't want to hear from car mechanics or lawyers or doctors. We want to talk to people that might be likely to use Jira in the future. So people that are using software day-to-day to get their job done, that are probably sitting at a desk at least 50% of the day, things like that. So think about that when you're figuring out your research participants. Who is most likely to represent your customer base? After you've sorted that out, it's time to think about how. So as I mentioned earlier, there's 2 main methods that you can use to answer your research question: moderated research and unmoderated research. So moderated is when you're engaging directly with the participant. You can see them, they can see you, whether it's in person or over video conference. And this allows you to get some really rich feedback. It allows you to ask some follow-up questions as well. The downside here is that moderated research takes more time and also can cost more money. So we tend to pay our research participants at least $100 an hour or so for their time. And also scheduling all of that can take some time. There's scheduling logistics, but it does allow you to get that rich feedback. On the flip side, unmoderated research allows you to get research really quickly. So you can get research back within a few hours, which can be really valuable for a team that's trying to move fast. On the downside, you don't get that rich feedback because you aren't able to ask people those follow-up questions. Remember, this is research that's all recorded. People are conducting it independently. It's getting recorded and sent back to you. You're watching and you're taking notes, but you can't ask those follow-up questions, and it's usually pretty high level. I can't tell you how many times I'm watching an unmoderated research video and someone says something that's just pure gold, and I really want to ask them more. I want to learn, why did you find that so valuable? Or why was that so frustrating? Tell me more about that. But I can't because it's recorded and they're gone. I have no idea who they are. So it can be a little frustrating, but it's really quick. So you kind of have to pick your poison. There's pros and cons for both. If you are interested in this unmoderated research, it can be an easy way to dip your toes into research. We use a tool called usertesting.com. There's lots of other ones out there nowadays, UserZoom, Loop11, Validately. And the reason why you can get research back so quickly from these tools is because they have panels of people. So they probably have a couple hundreds of thousands of people that fit all sorts of different types of criteria that you can reach out to and get these research respondents research videos back in just a few hours. And here's a quick look at what one of them looks like. So see, you can't actually see the participant's face. You can't see their facial expressions or body language or anything like that. You can hear their voice. They are responding out loud and talking out loud as they go through the tasks. But again, you get it back really quickly, so there's pros and cons of both. It really just depends on how much time, budget, and resources you have.
All right, so now you've defined your research question, you've defined your method, you've decided who, you've decided how. So now it's time to create your tasks, your questions, and also your design mocks. So first of all, when you're defining your tasks, it's really important to think about the things that you want people to be doing in your test. So what are the common actions that you want people to be actually undertaking? So something that we've found really useful is looking at the actual data in our product. So what are actual people doing and what are their behaviours to help inform our tasks? And then it's really important to think about the follow-up questions that you want to ask people after the tasks. And that's often a why question. So why did you do something this particular way? It just depends on your situation and what you're testing. So one really pro tip that we'd like to share with you today is write scenarios. This is really key when coming up with your test. It's all very well and good, for example, when we were redesigning the project create experience, just to say, hey, can you show us how you'll create a project? That doesn't really give the participant the right context, so it's really important that you actually give them some context. So something that we did was pretend that you're organising an office Christmas party in the sense of the Jira core boards, and then got them to create a project from there. Yeah. So when you're defining your mocks, it can be really as low fidelity as something like what you see on the screen here, so don't overthink it. It can be as low fidelity as this, or it can be as high fidelity as something like this. So it's really up to you where you're at in your process, where the team's at, how much time you have, the resources you have. It really just comes down to what you're testing and your team's needs. So again, keep it simple. I know being a designer, I tend to finesse over the small details. It does not matter. So just don't overthink it. Get your test out there, even if it's a sketch, even if it's a bit of content, an idea, just don't overthink it.
All right, so now the moment that you've been waiting for, it's time to actually test with people. It's time to get out there and gather your research data. So you might be wondering, how many people do I actually need to research with? And like all research questions, the answer is it depends. So if I'm doing a very in-depth research study, maybe where I'm going to people's offices and I'm sitting next to them and I'm observing how they use Jira in their day-to-day lives or something like that, I might be okay with maybe 6 to 8 people because I'm getting a lot of really rich feedback. But if I'm doing something like an unmoderated navigation test, I might want to up the quantity a little bit to maybe 20 or 30 people, or maybe even more, because that's such high-level feedback. And so maybe a few more people is going to be really helpful. One tip here is to get your team involved. No matter how many people you're testing with or the method, get your team involved. Don't just go out there and do your research independently. Have people there, have people taking notes, discuss the feedback as it's coming in, and make the research really come alive with people, because this means that people will be more likely to actually take action on the research once it's completed, rather than just letting your report sit in a dusty corner. Again, when you're conducting this research, one pro tip we have for you is to not just to listen to what people say, but watch what they do. So many times I have had people come in and struggle for minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes on a task. And they're just struggling, and I'm biting my tongue trying not to tell them what to do, and give them, the key to the task. And then I ask them, how was that? And they say, it wasn't too bad. It was fine. I figured it out. So if I just went off of what they said, I'd tell my team, yeah, it's fine. We don't need to make any changes. But it's really important to dig into what they do and actually pay attention. Similarly, if you have a preference test, it might be tempting to just say, 90% of people picked version A. But dig into the why behind that. Why did they prefer version A? Maybe there's aspects of version B that they preferred that you could actually bring into version A and make it stronger. So again, dig into the why behind everything. It's not just what people say.
All right, so now that you've sent out your test and you've got all of this awesome data, it's now time to analyze that data. So what you might find with your data, that you get a really clear outcome, so it's really clear to you and your team which direction you should go down for a particular decision you're trying to make. Or it might be a bit more of a nuance and you need to dig more into the details of your data. But what fidelity you actually go into is really up to you. I know sometimes ours can be quite high level, or we sometimes go quite in depth into the data. It just, again, depends on your research question and also what your team's needs are. So one really key thing is when you're analysing your results, make sure you document it. We use Confluence to do this. And it's a really awesome way just to share what you're doing with your team. I can't tell you how many times, we've gotten down the track and been like, where was that Confluence page? So just make sure that you document it, you know where it is, so it's quickly and easily shareable to your team. So something that's a little bit more advanced that we wanted to share with you guys today is something that we've been playing around with, which we call the UX scorecard. So essentially what the UX scorecard is it's looking at a bunch of usability metrics in a table, like you can see here, that we're trying to move the needle on. So some example metrics are time on task, so how long it takes someone to complete a particular task in your test, how easy it is as well, so looking at things like UX Lite or SUS, as well as looking at things like the expectation score and whatnot. It just, again, what metrics you look at, you don't have to use these. It just comes back to your research goals. I'd just like to point out that this is quite an advanced thing, so you don't feel like you have to do that in your early signal test, but we feel like it's a really neat way to present back to the broader team, because you can see here it's really clear between two different iterations of your designs, which one's sort of improving the different cohorts that you've tested as well. So there you have it, the 5 quick and easy steps to get you started with your own early signal testing.
So hopefully by now you're excited to go back to your team, take a big, scary product or design decision, and do some early signal testing. Run your research and analyze the results. But just remember, while all this data is great, early signal testing is just to inform your decision. It's not the decision. You don't have to do what the data says. That's ultimately up to you. So, while unfortunately you can't use early signal testing to help you decide whether or not you should marry someone or move across the globe, we've shown you today that you can use it to help make some scary product and design decisions, like we did with Atlassian's new look. So the next time you're debating over which direction to take or which option to choose, think back to this talk, think about early signal testing, run some research, and just do it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.